You mean to tell me the humans have been asleep this whole time? Commander Ulak's voice dripped with disbelief as he stared at the tactical screen, which displayed a section of the Milky Way galaxy. The room, filled with high-ranking officers from the Galactic Coalition, remained tense. Every species represented at the table, warriors from the battle-hardened Shigari, tacticians from the Vul, and the brutal Skora, had faced some version of the same problem over centuries. The humans, despite their apparent sloth, were always one step ahead in combat. The Coalition couldn't figure out why. How is it even possible? Ulak continued, his eyes narrowing. Our spies report minimal military activity, yet every time we engage them, they wipe the floor with our forces like it's just practice. The humans don't even seem interested. It's not a mystery, said General Torvak of the Skora, tapping his sharp claws on the table with impatience. The humans are toying with us. They know they're stronger and faster. They're just pretending to play along, sleeping as it were. The room collectively stiffened at the accusation. The idea that humans, small, short-lived, and from a backwater planet with the oddly poetic name Earth, could hold the upper hand against the mightiest war powers of the galaxy was absurd, yet the evidence could no longer be denied. They are not toying with us, responded Admiral Krell of the Shigari, his usually calm demeanor cracking. They sleep in every sense. Their civilization doesn't even fully grasp their potential. They're just dormant, reacting only when provoked. Even their ancient history is filled with skirmishes and self-contained wars, never conquering, never fully realizing the power they possess. General Torvak snorted. So you're telling me that humanity is just sitting on a mountain of untapped destruction, and no one has seen fit to mention this before? They don't need to mention it, Krell said. Look at the data. In the last 100 galactic cycles, they've repelled every attack, won every war, without ever initiating conflict themselves. They awaken, strike, and then they go back to sleep. It's not a strategy. It's a fact of their existence. Ulak blinked. He had been in battles where humans had seemingly appeared out of nowhere, decimated entire fleets, and then retreated as if the whole ordeal had bored them. He assumed it was tactical genius. But this? The humans are bored with war, muttered Krell, voicing what everyone feared. Their species has reached a stage where conflict is a mere reflex. Ridiculous, Torvak growled. If they are so powerful, why haven't they conquered the galaxy? We've all seen what their ships can do. They could have steamrolled any of us by now. The room fell silent. Krell leaned forward, his gaze sharp. Because they don't want to. Conquest isn't in their nature. It's not ambition that drives them, it's necessity. And only when pushed, they only awaken when the situation demands it. Ulak rubbed his temples. The thought was too much. He had lost countless soldiers trying to figure out human tactics. They had dissected human weapons, analyzed their fleet movements, but nothing added up. There were no consistent patterns. Just victory after victory, often at the last minute, as though the humans were waiting until the very edge of defeat to strike back. You know what this means, said Krell. If they ever wake up fully, if they ever want to fight. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The room stayed quiet, the weight of the revelation sinking in. What could they do? How could they outsmart a species that treated war like a casual exercise? And worse, what if the humans one day realized just how easily they could end every conflict in the galaxy? Torvak broke the silence, his voice unusually subdued. Then we need to make sure they never wake up. How do you suggest we do that? Ulak asked. How do you keep a sleeping giant from realizing it's a god of war? Simple, Torvak said, his eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. You give it no reason to stir. Commander Ulak felt a chill creep down his spine. The others clearly shared his unease, but it wasn't an unreasonable idea. If humans never felt truly threatened, If they could be kept in their slumber, then perhaps the galaxy could stay safe. But if we keep poking them, if any one of us makes the wrong move, Olak hesitated, it could be the end of all of us. Admiral Krell leaned back in his chair, his 4 eyes narrowing. Then we must ensure no one ever gives them that reason, and that includes us. Meanwhile, light years away, on a quiet, unremarkable space station in orbit around Earth, Captain Hayes sat in a dimly lit control room, feet up on the console, half asleep. The human fleet was on standby as usual, drifting lazily in low orbit. Earth too was silent. There were no pressing wars, no impending threats. It was, as always, peaceful and boring. "Anything on the scanners?" Hayes asked, yawning. "Nothing," replied Lieutenant Chen, not even bothering to glance up from his book. "Just like yesterday, and the day before, and the year before that," Hayes chuckled, folding his arms behind his head. "Good. Let's hope it stays that way." As Hayes let his eyes close, settling into the familiar, comfortable stillness, somewhere deep within him, the very core of his species, there remained a slumbering potential, barely tapped. But for now, it was asleep. Just like him. General Torvok's eyes narrowed as he scanned the reports again. Every engagement, every confrontation told the same story. Humans woke up just long enough to obliterate anything in their path, then retreated into what seemed like indifference. It made no sense. Even the most disciplined species in the galaxy showed signs of strain after prolonged conflict, but the humans seemed to shrug it off like they were barely involved. "They don't take this seriously," he muttered under his breath, as the other coalition generals silently reviewed their own data. Olak shifted in his chair, clearly unsettled. "If we push them too far, we risk waking them completely," he said. His voice was low, almost hesitant. "We've seen what happens when they feel cornered. The last skirmish wiped out 2 fleets, and they didn't even mobilize their full forces." Torvok slammed his fist on the table, rattling the holographic displays. "Which is why we need to hit them differently, force them to stay asleep." He gestured at the screen, where Earth spun serenely in its orbit, its human inhabitants blissfully unaware of the galactic panic surrounding them. "We've been trying to beat them at their own game, fighting them directly." "It's clear that's a mistake," Torvok continued. "They're too good at it, better than any of us. So we stop playing by their rules. Instead, we keep them distracted, make them think there's no threat worth their time." "And how do we do that?" Admiral Krell asked, his voice cold but curious. "We can't exactly stage a galaxy-wide charade." "They'll figure it out." "Not if we're smart about it," Torvok said, pacing now, the gears in his mind clearly turning. "We don't fight them head-on. We use subterfuge, misinformation, little skirmishes that keep them occupied but never fully engaged. We let them believe they're still untouchable, still the apex predators. They'll remain confident and stay asleep," Olak frowned. "That's a risky strategy. One wrong move, and they could realize what we're doing. And then? Well, we all know what happens," Torvok smirked, baring his teeth. "That's the beauty of it. We make sure no one pushes them far enough to wake them up. We let the humans continue their little naps. Meanwhile, we quietly build our defenses and prepare, just in case they stir." Krell leaned forward. "If we go through with this, we'll need to ensure complete cooperation from every coalition member. No rogue factions, no freelance warlords looking to test their strength against Earth. If even one species decides to push the humans too hard, the entire galaxy could pay the price. Which is why we need the cooperation of every race," Torvok agreed. "No one challenges the humans. We keep them distracted, we lull them back into their state of rest. And we wait, quietly, until we've figured out a way to deal with them. Permanently." Olak looked unconvinced. "And if they do wake up?" Torvok's eyes gleamed with something that resembled madness. Then we'll have prepared. We'll have enough firepower to face them if we must. But if we're lucky, they'll never know what hit them. It's a calculated risk. Calculated risks often backfire, Alak pointed out, the weight of his words heavy in the room. Torvok scoffed. Do you have a better idea? Silence filled the command center once again as the Galactic Coalition leaders mulled over their options. The humans had proven themselves to be an enigma, capable of annihilating entire fleets with minimal effort, yet disinterested in galactic domination. Their technology, their strategies, their soldiers, none of it made sense. They should have been a force of unstoppable conquest, yet they barely seemed to care about the wars they fought. Krell finally spoke, breaking the heavy quiet. We proceed with caution. Torvok's plan has merit, but we don't underestimate the humans. We keep them complacent, distracted. If we can control the narrative, they won't see the threat coming. Ulak sighed. I hope you're right. If this goes wrong, there won't be a galaxy left for us to fight over. On the outskirts of the Sol system, a lone human patrol ship floated quietly through the void. Inside, Lieutenant Chen sat at his console, flipping through various sensor reports. As usual, nothing interesting popped up. Space was vast and empty, and after decades of skirmishes with the Coalition, things had finally settled into a sort of unspoken truce. At least, that's what it seemed like. Chen yawned, stretching his arms. You ever wonder why they keep sending us out here, Captain? Captain Hayes glanced up from his seat, where he had been lazily monitoring the ship's status. Not really. Orders are orders. Besides, it's good to be out in space. Beats sitting around on Earth all day. Yeah, but nothing ever happens. Every few months, we get reports of some Coalition ships sniffing around, but they never make a move. It's like they're waiting for something. Hayes shrugged. Maybe they finally realized it's not worth the effort. We're too far out here. They can poke around all they want, but they won't come close to Earth. Chen chuckled. Yeah, probably. Still makes you wonder. They're always on edge, like they're afraid of something. Hayes leaned back in his chair, watching the stars drift by outside the viewport. Maybe they should be. They've seen what we can do. They know better than to push us too hard. There was a long pause before Chen spoke again. Do you ever think about, what if we did push them back? I mean really push them. Not just the skirmishes, but an actual war. If we decided to, finish it. Hayes shook his head. We don't need to. We've got nothing to prove. Besides, why wake a sleeping beast? Chen raised an eyebrow. Aren't we the beast? Hayes grinned. Exactly. Outside the patrol ship, the vastness of space stretched in every direction. Quiet, still for now. The Coalition's plan to keep the humans in their slumber unraveled faster than anyone had predicted. It began with a skirmish on the edges of known space, far from Earth. A small faction of Skora warlords, tired of the Coalition's cautious approach, decided to test the humans. They believed the Coalition's fears were exaggerated, and that the humans had simply been lucky in their victories. If they could score a decisive win, it would bring them glory beyond measure. They launched a surprise attack on an isolated human outpost, barely guarded, minimal defenses, and far from any Earth reinforcements. The Skora warlords expected an easy victory, a display of dominance to send a message to the rest of the galaxy. What they got was annihilation. The response from the humans was immediate and brutal. Within hours, every single Skora ship had been obliterated, leaving nothing but debris scattered across the empty void. The message from Earth was simple. Don't push us. News of the Skora's defeat spread like wildfire. The Coalition scrambled to contain the fallout, but it was too late. The humans had stirred, and worse, they now had questions. Commander Ulac stood before the assembled coalition leaders, his face grim. The humans have mobilized. The room was tense, filled with the same high-ranking officers who had once hoped to lull the humans back into their dormancy. Now that hope was shattered. Earth had sent out scouts, warships, and communication teams, all mobilized and looking for answers. The humans were no longer passive observers. They were awake. They know something's going on, Ulac continued. They're asking questions. They're demanding to know why the Skora attacked and whether the coalition was involved. General Torvok slammed his fist on the table again, his frustration boiling over. Those idiots ruined everything. The plan was working. The humans were asleep, distracted content. And now, thanks to the Skora, they're riled up. Admiral Krell, who had remained silent for most of the briefing, finally spoke. We need to de-escalate, immediately. If they think the entire coalition is behind this attack, we won't survive what comes next. They already suspect us, Ulac said, shaking his head. Our spies report that Earth's leadership is in discussions about whether this was a coordinated effort by the coalition. They're suspicious. Torvok growled, his claws scraping against the metal of the table. So what do we do now? Beg for their forgiveness? Krell looked sharply at Torvok. We might not have a choice. The humans aren't just another adversary. They're a species that could end everything if they wanted to. And now they've been given a reason to take a closer look at us. Ulac turned to Krell. You think it's too late? Krell's eyes darkened. I don't know, but I do know this. If we don't give them a reason to back down, they won't. We need to make them think this was an isolated incident. Pin it all on the Skora warlords. Do whatever it takes to avoid a full-scale war. And if that doesn't work, Torvok asked, his voice tight. Krell didn't answer. He didn't need to. The room already knew the answer. If the humans decided to unleash their full strength, the coalition didn't stand a chance. All their efforts to keep the humans in check had been for nothing. Earth's response was swift and decisive. Within days of the Skora attack, fleets of human warships had been deployed throughout the galaxy, cutting off key trade routes and establishing control over strategic points. Human diplomats reached out to the coalition, but their tone was different now. No longer casual, no longer complacent. Captain Hayes stood aboard the flagship of Earth's fleet, looking out at the holographic map of the galaxy. The human forces had mobilized with a speed and efficiency that shocked even the coalition's top strategists. Hayes had known this day would come eventually, but he hadn't expected it so soon. Lieutenant Chen approached, his expression serious. We've intercepted communication from the coalition. They're throwing the Skora warlords under the bus, claiming the attack was rogue and unauthorized. Hayes smirked. Of course they are. They know what's coming if they don't back down. And what happens if they don't? Chen asked, raising an eyebrow. Hayes shrugged. Then we do what we've always done. We end it. Chen paused, studying his captain for a moment. You really think it's going to come to that? A full-scale war with the coalition? Hayes turned to face him, his expression hard. I don't know, but I do know this. The humans are awake now. And if the coalition thinks they can push us back into our slumber, they're in for a rude awakening. The Galactic Coalition's leaders sent a desperate plea to Earth, offering reparations and claiming no knowledge of the Skora's intentions. The humans, while not fully convinced, agreed to a temporary ceasefire. But the message was clear. They were watching. They were waiting. The slumbering gods of war had stirred. And though they had not yet fully awakened, the galaxy now lived in fear of the day they might. The coalition, once confident in their ability to control the humans, now trembled at the thought of what would happen if they failed to appease them. Humanity had made their position clear. They would not start the war, but if pushed, they would end it completely. And somewhere deep in space aboard their warships and stations, the humans waited, content for now, to return to their quiet existence. But the galaxy knew better. The gods of war were not asleep. They were merely waiting for the next fool to disturb them.